Infrastructure for distributed transactions in Java database connectivity. Here you can see infrastructure for distributed transactions. Distributed transactions require an infrastructure that provides these roles. Transaction manager controls transaction boundaries and manages the two-phase commit protocol. This typically will be an implementation of JTA. JDBC drivers that implements the XA data source, XA and XA connection, and XA resources interfaces. These are interfaces, and an application visible implementation of data source to sit on top of each XA data source object and interact with the transaction manager. The data source implementation is typically provided by an application server. Resource managers to manage the underlying data. In the context of JDBC API, a resource manager is a DBMS server. The term resource manager is borrowed from JTA to emphasize the point that described transaction using JDBC API follow the architecture specified in that document. This infrastructure is most often implemented in a three-tier architecture that includes the following: client tier, middle tier that include applications and EJB server working with external transaction manager and a set of JDBC drivers, and three multiple resource managers. Distributed transactions can be implemented in two tiers. In a two-tier architecture, the application itself acts as a transaction manager and interacts directly with the JDBC drivers. The JDBC drivers XA data source implementation. This diagram illustrates the distributed transaction infrastructure. XA data source and XA connection interfaces, which are defined in the package javax.sql, are implemented by JDBC drivers that support distributed transactions. An XA connection object is a pooled connection that can participate in a distributed transaction. More precisely, XA connection extend pooled connection interface by adding a method getXA resource. This method produces an XA resource object that can be used by a transaction manager to coordinate the work done in the connection with the other participant in the distributed transaction. XA resource. The XA resource interface is defined with the JTA specification and is the mapping in the Java programming language of the XOpen group XA interface. An XA resource object is produced by calling XA connection dot get XA resource method and is used to associate XA connection object with distributed transaction. A given XA connection object may be associated with at most one of the transaction at a time. The JDBC driver maintains a one-to-one correspondence between XA resource object and its associated XA connection object that is multiple calls to the getXA resource method must all return the same object. Transaction management. The participation in a distributed transaction is defined and as work done between invocation of a method's XA resource start dot XA resource dot start and XA resource dot end. Outside these boundaries, the transaction mode is local and connection behaves exactly like a local connection. Closing the connection. A typical distributed transaction environment, middle tier server needs to be notified when an application has finished using a connection. As in the pool connection object, the middle tier server will add itself as a connection event listener so that it will be notified when the application calls the method connection.close. At this point, the server will notify the transaction manager so that it can end the transaction branch for the corresponding XA resource object. If the server's data source implementation includes connection pooling, the connection pooling module will be notified that it can return the physical XA connection object into the pool. Note, a distribution transaction may still be active after participating connection object is closed. This is not true for local transactions. Limitations of XA resource interface. The javax.transaction.xa resource interface is limited to defining only the set of method needed to join and participate in global transactions as defined by the XOpenXA standard. This allows any resource manager that implements the interface to participate with any other resource manager or transaction manager that has the same level of support. Here you can see JDBC application interacts with application server. JDBC application is connected to application server via data source API. Here the application pool for A and application pool for B are in application server. Application server interacts with JDBC drivers. Here the JDBC drivers and JDBC drivers interacts with resource managers. Here the JDBC application is connected to application server via data source API. Here the application server is connected to JDBC driver A via XA data source API. And JDBC driver A interacts with resource manager, and JDBC driver A is connected to physical XA to application server via physical XA connection A1. Here the application server is connected to transaction manager via XA resource A1. And here the application server is connected to JDBC application via logical connection A1. And here the application server is connected to XA resource API, connected to JDBC driver B via XA resource API, and JDBC driver B interacts with resource manager. JDBC driver B is connected to application server physical XA connection B1 here. And here XA resource B, application server is connected to transaction manager via XA resource B1. And here application server is connected to JDBC application via logical connection B1. Now this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for watching it.